Anaski yagi adach gurkan chwat Tles yakwad lak. Dis Tlein Wooch Yan Wooch sa Zug atkuha Atue Cake Chwaha Dech Isha Shao Hek Achis Shawat Tahini Kater Alci Achke Yake Wooch
cheese inkinigi. Ja, kesnachwats unch. Ja, tag. Jest kuahai owa awa. Ku hasitoasaku. Kukan hasawatuni. Kwash zisk. Awatsich. Jangu. Tsa. Ye owa. Kesh at ungekocht koa. Ade. Ye owa achtuati. Ja, qonea ya tleit darkness-tani, gan qanins iqde hasna atch we kuakan. Ye owa ho achtsu we janmu. Chak we janmu has atlunin wal yes ka taktsu. Ye owa ya ha atkai qanakhwe hak e. Wait de katwe kutan we anach. Ida dune we gaat at gaan ani kakaya ida dune aka away we atlun gawu atlun you do a sako at ka jaguta sai so khatsati khatse wa kakaya yidat ko askit yekshe askit tayite kwa good kwasliwi yek egen chish ha in kinegi ya was kuch kwa de kuch kwa de tini Aqaqaqwashi we kuni nakhsa asaya qatsatitsa we buakan washisaku kaa katua sagu shukwa we shich ya hastu yatki ke has awsawat ajoy tasha tuash go hasawat luni isitin gwalki we shkalnik Bambi you do a sago did Kuakan Katsko Husati Utle du Tla would do a jack. At your way where Ka Kakatu a she, where a shade the Ewek it was a go. At your way where Ka Kuakan, which a good sai kutsati, was a shady just Bone Ayakena any, Shakuns you do a sago at. A take a shady a dach yadayach. Shataka you do a sako at. Wooch aya yadayach. Kadech dech. Shakakisht. What give you do a sako? Where ekayan wune a shady. Shaklats ow. Ow yacheti. Where a shady. Ye awahatuati wait One Collins talkte, shich atsu at the clue. Gulchish, you echawe yohan. You two, I guess, a go yoke with Tani. Equake. As to Anikok echat getia that way Albuquerque, you do a sock. Yeah, chagut you a tongue equatia, where you a tongue clank as to da Navajo pa Apache. Chagut datsu. Hachunki, chak, go. Take away Hawatian, Klingit ka dene. Ja, Jaguta Zukutzeti, hast du ihn ja recht getan, ja, zu tat. Ja, Katretz auch, was hast du gesagt? Pueblo, Achua, wait, Laguna, Zuni, Jaguta. Hast du juch atangi? Just has a wish to has altu. Kill hast du tuash gut Jagut kuu. Stu has altu, hast du juch atangi. Yet dazu, Kill katushid, hast du juch atangi. How? Kill dictionary, Teslasake, Kutzeti. Just watching you Ratulatki. Ye Owan has a Kawaniko Cajun 100. Kuu, Cajun 100 nach Kuu. Ausaku has to Yukatangi. Lakudzi. Achua has to Toasagu Shgoon has a Yer. Wishgoon yik. Just has to Tliko has Yukatangi a yik. Katsu Achtuasaku. Aka we. Hechasaku wasagachtu sa kindergarten. Yet we schoon kuddi de awe schoon Tlein ach wasagu ulchishi ayatas lingit rinach ka I ratangi ka idil tu. Gwalkiwe kwati at we has to in tani we have a ku ka ya jakutatsu ya konaida ka Anishinaabe ka Lakota da has da inni achtawasagu cho achia da ka wuchi nijituni wan qanin slidzi yis ka yis ku wan qanin stesh has to toshku ayo qatangi team wuchi nu qatash atgan aqa kaika ach what just yis ka gate wutuda adia ja ye gehan da kauni ja achietki wuchi nu qatutla ja hayo qatangi de schoonie qoa a ja nach yan khakho kana kaunik eli dan kleka yugatangi gwalla khuni hasaqwa achi ya wa achtwasaku qoa kalkadegi at awe ha yugatangi tushtiach adusa awas ku ka adusa klal awas ku gwall achiet kitin tagoy kacha a ka yugatangi tin has duin yugatani ye awe bilchish Gleib da gegeus de tanguk sa ye iti. Ja, got like what
I just see you, Doc Giannis. Ton Juno.
See you. Good cheese. Okay, anything you folks want to recap any of that? What were we talking about?
A lot about how other tribes are teaching or maintaining their languages. And it sounded like the Pueblo peoples don't actually have any written versions. It's all spoken.
Some of them don't write their language. Some of them don't allow people who aren't from there to to learn. And some people who go study there, they have to like change, they have to invent communities when they go elsewhere and talk about them. And they're also not allowed to show words and stuff. It's a very interesting approach. Some of them have lots of speakers, you know, but well, I think 500 is a lot. Okay. Anything else? Any questions about what we were talking about?
The first part, you're also talking about how the deer and would come down from the mountains in the winter. People would hunt in the winter, those and sheep or mountain goat.
Yeah, Shanaqait started us off today with hunting story and digging, you know, harvesting stories, and then got me thinking about like I haven't even gone hunting yet. So just in terms of like how you get to some of those things. So it's a tesh nachwat unch. I haven't hunted yet. And so that would be it. So I haven't hunted. So you would name Qulqan, tesh nachwat unch yatak. I haven't gone deer hunting yet this year. And then you could go up one entry, and then you would have, if you put the A on the front of it, Kesh anchwat unch yatak. I haven't hunted yet this year. And so you can add like a time marker after it, yatak. And so this is where things get like, some of these entries are really great because they have, this one has all these different verb modes entered for all these, they're already conjugated for person, which we're going to talk about a little bit today as conjugating verbs. But this reveals a pattern, which is great. But then you should be able to apply that pattern. So if you say here, going back down to this one, nachat unch. So then you should be able to say, well, I know another na conjugation verb. So I could say ta, which will become teach when you put a suffix on it. So I think I could say nachatech. I sleep every time. And then you could probably say tesh nachwatech. I haven't slept yet. And so you could start to figure out how to approximate what those verbs are going to be so that you can start to use them. But that's getting into sort of more complex senses of time and things that you're communicating. Okay. And what are the four names for the, and what kind of deer was it specifically? Anybody know?
I had a question. Shady. When you said they were yeast shady, did you say they were called head potatoes?
Yeah,
Yeah,
potato head.
potato
So
heads.
which one is potato head? What kind of deer are we talking about?
The Bambi?
Well, I did talk about, yeah. Why did I bring up Bambi?
The one that just has little tiny horns.
Well, I said in the fall, we usually hunt the males only because the little ones are still with their mama. And so we don't want to orphan them, which like in Bambi, he was just a child when his mother was killed, I say. So then I started talking about male deers, and we have these four names for them, which mark their stages of growth, which is really fun. So shakuns, which one is shakuns? What's going on with shakuns?
That's the head potato one, right?
Yeah. And
So maybe the youngest, this first stage.
What do we think it looks like? It
A
doesn't look
little
like
nub.
yes, it's just the bumps. So
Little nub.
before the antler pokes out of the skin. Everybody remember what was next? Shataka. What is that one?
Tuyayamaka?
Spear
Shataka.
on the head.
Spearhead.
Okay.
So this is when a single antler is poking out of the head like that. Then shakisht. Barbecue fork head. And then shaklatzao. You should be able to hear that one.
The crab.
Crab head, right? So shakuns, shataka, shaklakisht, and shaklatzao. So those are your 4 stages of a male deer. So those are kind of fun things to think about. Yeah, and I'm here in Albuquerque. And so I'm at an Indigenous Language Institute conference. Today was day 1. It was fun to talk to a bunch of different people about their languages and what they're doing. There's quite a few people that want to build, like either want to or already have built schools where only the Indigenous language is spoken, or at least it's a primary language. And so it's been really interesting to talk with folks and to think about how that could happen back where we are. So any language things you want to share or any language questions that you have? We will get to the al'óon stuff, but we're going to do a couple other things first. Okay. Let's get into the words of the master speakers. Can I have somebody read that for us?
Hey. Oh, go ahead. Gupte.
De Sitsini ye away adayak idu ayak Juan Husti Sadzi Nuch Seske Kid Kigidla Seat
Kek Kidashi. Yak Egan Chish. Ade Sitsini ye away adayak idu ayak Juan Husti Sadzi Nuch Kek Kidashi. What do we recognize here?
Strong or strength.
Yep. And Ade Litsini, yeah.
Or
As
it
someone
is
said.
said. It is said.
Uh,
Ye away adayaka.
that is how Adayaka. What about the Adayaka one? Anybody know that one?
Someone said something specific.
Someone is saying something specific to someone.
Steve.
This one with the Ade and yeah on the other side, what are those doing?
Is that the place where it happens?
Well, Shetini, yeah, would be the place where it happens. This place of strength. But when you put Ade in front of it and yeah, it's a little bit.
The famous ade verbi ye construction,
Yes.
which
The way the verb happens.
Yes. The way of being strong. That's how I'd sort of translate that. That is how, in this case, well, they are saying it to them. And what are they saying?
Have courage.
Have
you
courage.
be strong.
Be strong. And then we get.
That's supposed to be a G.
He said it with a D specifically. So I do think there's like this is one of those kind of frozen phrases that is very hard to sort of analyze. Like there's certainly like something, probably a relational pronoun, It's really hard to tell because ye and I are identical in their relational and object pronoun forms. Do-ah, gu-ah, right? And so those are seem to have something to do with maybe being seated or situated somewhere, perhaps. Yach, like, Juan, may you, lest you type of a thing. But we just know that's one where we can just sort of put it in the memory bank, says have strength and courage, be of brave heart, however we want to sort of, it's encouraging. And we get puste nuch.
Like,
Christi is existence, isn't it?
Well, it's life.
mhm.
The noun form of pudzati, which is to exist or to be born. And so puste is life. I think I heard someone say what nuch is.
Life is strong forever.
Well,
Or
the chidzi part is maybe what we got to look at.
Difficult.
Life is always difficult. Keshkekakadashi. Do we know?
Don't.
Don't.
Don't
Let's go see
throw
what
it
Future.
away.
say it again.
Don't throw it away.
Well, so we have this fleet verb, which is to throw something. So let's go see if we could find this. It's got K in front of it, right? So we got to look for something with K, and then it's going to have the fleet on there. Well, I guess before we look that up, going back just to sort of like, what are we looking for? So this sheet. So what I'm looking for is K in the
Fleet.
front.
Oh, fleet
D.
with the classifier da.
Yeah,
Fleet
so a D+0 classifier, and then fleet. That should be those are the three things we're going to go look for. So we'll go back to here under table of contents. We'll go down to the verb section, go to L, and we'll go down and look for fleet. And so here's fleet, to throw. Yeah. And it's to throw something and it scatters when you throw it. So we do have throwing. Oh, this has K. So that's throw it away. So you could say K fleet, throw it away. But this one with the D classifier, to quit, to give up. And so you can find a future, they won't give up. So now this gets us like what the verb is. When we come back here, how is it now put together?
It's future, isn't it?
It's future. And if we look at,
Is it you singular too?
yes, you will not quit. This comes from King Gesti, David Katzig, who was Shangukedi. It's in a story called Tan Ka Itzawa, which was recorded, I think, in 2011. Can I get someone to read this one?
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, we lost your audio for a little bit. Maybe it's me. I just gotta.
You want me to say it again?
Yeah, one more time.
Okay, let me move this out of the way. Igu ayak kon. Yeshik has ha. Ik eet has was ach yedat.
Jeez, yigu ayach Juan. Yishish kohascha yiret haswusa achidat. So here's yigu ayach Juan again. So y'all be brave, y'all have strength and courage. Now, what about the second sentence?
Your grandchildren,
Parents.
grandparents.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yitlilkohas.
Are listening to you
Yes.
right now?
Yes.
Okay.
Cha gives it emphasis. It's like your grandparents, you see, so it puts focus back on this thing that we just said. Yich ate, to your mouth. Has wusiach. So here's another verb. So like this verb, if you have awaach, they heard something. Ausaach, they listened to something. So those are the same verb root, but we see the classifier changing, which now says someone's doing the thing. It's like hearing and listening are different but related things, right? Like you could hear something and then you can listen to something, right? Okay. This is Shkateh, Jesse Johnny. She was Chukan Shah. Probably also recorded in 2011 with an audio recording. I asked her, what do learners of Tlingit need to know to stay inspired and to stick to it?
Yeah.
What did I freeze?
Aw.
Okay.
Fake.
No? Okay.
Good day sa Chukansha, I mean Shkate Yatian.
Gudach sage?
Sige, Yannicka?
You said Gudesa?
Where did she live?
Chuna.
Huna.
But then she was in Sitka by the time I recorded this.
Okay.
I went to visit her at a facility where elderly people live, and we visited for a while. Although I think when I recorded this, she was living in her granddaughter's house, I think. Okay. Can I get someone to read this one?
As to itich kerisak yen qati hayachti.
Cheesh. Has to eat the suck in kati hayatki. And what do we recognize here?
Plus 2 is there.
Yep. Demolzes. Yep.
Iti is the thing that's left behind.
Yeah. So, and then what do you think the does then?
That's at the place, right?
At the place of their remains. What about Katie?
If you said something, you froze. I couldn't hear you.
Yeah. Am I back? My internet just kicked in.
You are back.
Okay. What is Katie?
Is it a seed?
It is. Hastu itik Katie, a seed in their remains. Pinyan Katie achtuasuguyat. Okay. What about sak?
The future. Huh?
Yes. So to be. So like ha'atchai sak, it will become our food. So it's really interesting that Tlingit has this as an adjective. So sak and yi are a kind of a matched pair, I guess. So sak would be to be, and yi would be formerly was. For example, two people are going to get married. You might say, duchuch sak. They're the one that will be their husband. Dushat sak, the one that will be their wife. And then you could say, duchuch yi, their ex-husband. Dushat yi, their ex-wife. They used to be that, but they aren't anymore. So they're not super common, but they are good to know. What about ينقتي?
It will be.
Someone will be.
It will be.
Not really will. You'd have ينقتي.
Yeah, but
Oh,
It
it
le-
that's hortative, isn't it?
It is hortative.
It will be.
Well, what did John, Paul, George, and Ringo say?
Let
Let
it
it
be.
ينقتي ينقتي. Yes, it let it be, right? Let it be that way, right? Hayatki. Put it all together, folks.
Our children.
May our children be seeds in their. My brain just died. Sorry.
Remains.
That's
In our
Thank you.
footsteps.
in their remains. And who is they? This mysterious they.
The ancestors.
That's right. It's pretty often in Tlingit, we just call them hastu, like they're not even, if you really study those speeches and like hatu nagu yes, note how many times they talk about ancestors and sometimes they don't even name them, like Hashagun or Hashuka or Hashishkohas. So this is
Quick question. As
Uh-huh.
I'm trying to write down my notes, how do you say used to be but isn't anymore?
Oh, sak and yi.
How do you spell yee?
Let me start out. I'll start some notes of my own. Hold on a second. Let me close this. So, sak and yi. Let me turn off my spell check here. So to be and formerly at was. To be and used to be. Okay. One more.
Jeez.
Can I get a reader?
Sebe Yukatangi.
Cheesh. And do we know? Oh, sorry, this was Hakathon. Lawrence Shakely. She's Lukachati. Can we translate that one?
Our
Language saves
language is our language. Sinech.
How do you know?
Our
Saved
language.
us.
Our
Saved
language
us. Nice.
saved us.
There's a book with that title, very similar.
Right.
There is.
I was sitting right next to
How I
her.
recognized it.
Sitting right next to her when she said it. Hausaneer Hayukatangi. This was Kaseir Selena Everson. She was Deshitan. Okay, we did them all. We did them all. Now, at some point, we got to go back to our syllabus and do the ones in there, but we'll save that for another time. So I drew a tree. I was at a language conference, I think in 2007, maybe 2008. No, it wasn't that long ago. It's 2017, maybe. And I saw, I believe it was a Haudenosaunee language, which is one from that kind of area, East Coast, that were creating visual metaphors. Getting a repeat of how their language worked. And I thought that was cool. I could do something like that. So this kind of goes, if you tip the tree to the left, then you would be reading it left to right. So we kind of go, oh, well, way on the outside, you have plural markers, you have preverbs, which might be talking about motion or meaning or modifying the verb. You have objects, you have thematic, you have conjugation stuff, and then you have the subject. And those are all well, from here, like, so this light brown part is the preverb. This part is the prefix, which also includes the classifier. And then you get down here.
Leave out the identifier as our microwave, if you will, and you put before the
And then you get down to here, and you've got your verb root. And then you have stem variation here, which means what is the vowel doing? And then you can have some suffixes. So repetition, relational, decessive, removing or restoring, missing something, like you shot the basketball and missed, or you shot at the deer and missed it, and easily becomes. And so just trying to think of how to represent this stuff. And then you could have a post verb. So you can have habitual, which is nooch, consecutive, conditional, or contingent, which we'll talk about those things some other time. But then I thought, well, what if a tree represented the language? I did another one with a little switchboard. And then I think I settled on this. So the color-coded system for the Tlingit verb. And we have talked about the preverb, the object, a little bit on the thematic, but we're going to do that today. Conjugation, subject. So this is who the verb happens to. This is who does the verb. It's very important to just keep those things. You don't have to know how they work in English. You have to know how they work in Tlingit, though, because this one comes first. That's who it happens to. Then this one, right? Who loves who? This is very important for our Tlingit soap opera, right? Then we get the classifier. These things make up the prefix. The prefix is such an important part of a verb. And then you have the stem, which is the vowel. You might have a suffix. They're not very common. And then you might have a post verb. So post verb means it's a word after it that completely affects that verb. Preverb means it's a word before it that completely affects that verb. So let's look at some examples. Ask questions if you have any. So looking at preverbs, here's some examples. So they might indicate what type of motion it is. They might pluralize the third person, so they or them. They might indicate that someone's doing this to themselves or to each other. And they might also put the verb into a negative form. So if you say, ʼatudli.átk, I'm going to go there, ʼade is the preverb, because it really affects the way that this verb will conjugate. Whether you're going there, you did go there, those types of things. Has akaushahit, has is the preverb. It is pluralizing the third person, in this case, the subject. They all wrote it, a plural third person. Shtuchaltu, shtu completely changes the meaning of the verb. Because if you just said, well, you'd say, chashatu, I'm teaching them. Shtuchaltu, I'm teaching it inside of myself. I am studying it. So sometimes a preverb will just make it a whole different verb. And that's what happens in this case. And then we have the negative. Klesh wasaku. I don't know. Klesh is not. So nooch is the most common, I think, post verb. So here you've got yes kakahenen klesh pushk a nooch. And chatak as nooch. When fall comes, it is always bad weather. They cough all the time. So you can't just take any verb and throw nooch at the end, but that's an okay place to start. Like it has to be conjugated also a certain way, but we'll get to that. Any questions about these?
The one question I have is when it comes to adverbs, do they have to go in a specific order similar to the ones in that you listed?
Yeah, I think they have to go in that order. Like you say, tlach punach, not punach tlach. And you'll say klesh tlach punach. So yes, they are in certain order. So usually when I list them in tables, they'll say like number 1, number 2, number 3. And that's just saying like there are certain spots. Like I was kind of messing around with an idea. Let's see if I can find it here.
So I saw that in the verb handbook.
Mhm.
But what I'm wondering about is the adverbs, like the chagigea, chagutiede.
Yeah.
Nietzsche, do those have to go in a specific order as well?
Yes, there's a certain spot reserved for them. So I was trying to think of like just different ways. When I have free time, I think of different ways to put verbs together.
Do
So
you
for
have
me,
free
I
time?
think I think there's 12 spots and technically 13 because you could have object preverbs. But this is just sort of like no one's done like a formal study of this stuff. But the adverbs would be number 7. So you can pick one and put it there, but you can't put, I don't think you can put more than one. Like, I don't think you could say konde nikding. You can't stack them. You get one. It's like, oh, you used an adverb? Good job. Don't grab another one. So here I was trying to do a drop-down menu. So here's these things. I know that text is probably pretty small. But I haven't like sort of, well, let me show you what I'm trying to do here. So if I put clash, it populates down here. And then I might say hunach. And then and maybe I'll say hus. And then does it have a thematic? Maybe I'll say j. And then is it reflective? Yes, but it's a negative. So I've got another one where so I can pick the class. For this, I'll put 0. And then for the classifier, I'll put also 0. And then I'm trying to get another thing in here too, where we could put the root in there. Now, I haven't figured out yet how to get this to like smush them together for us. But has, oh, I forgot one. Where's yay? There. They haven't really worked, right? So like trying to think of like it's a manual click, click, click type of thing, but this shows you where those things would sit. And at some point, I'm going to partner with someone who knows how to do technology stuff, and we're going to make an app. So you could just sort of pick these things, and then it will put that together for you. Because really what it has to do is says, oh, it has these things. So then the next step is saying j, y, 0, 0 is going to be jiwu. So tesh kunach yehas jiwune. They haven't really worked. But I'm still working on this one. But I'll share what I'll do. I'll put a draft version up in a numbers document and an Excel file. So you can just sort of mess around with it if you so choose to. Anything else? The object to whom it is happening. So whom is objects in English, whom, him, her, them, me, you. Those are all object pronouns, right? So they usually come after the verb, right? I told you, I told them, right? You told me. So you already know how to use these in English, even though you might not. Like if someone just came up to you and said, how do subjects and objects work in English? You might not be able to tell them, but you know how to do it. But as you learn a second language, sometimes you do have to figure those things out because your brain already has a set of patterns in it. So sometimes when we talk about patterns, it's because we said, we got to build a whole nother system in there with a competing system, right? So in this case, so we're marking them as blue, and then the red is the subject. So on the top here, we've got some different object examples. Chat isachan, you love me. So there I am, the lucky object. Chat yi shuk, you all laughed at me. Now maybe, it better be in good fun. Ye ik kwasatin, you are the object. Ha wu'ig, they invited us. We are the object right there. So there's a list of these things. They occur in that same spot. So you get a wheel. Like, so if you go back to that spreadsheet thing that I did, you can select an object from there. So now going down to subjects. The subjects are a little more complicated because they are closer to the stem. So once they get closer, now they're going to be part of the contraction. Contraction means you've got like these four things, but now they got to start blending together. So yim tuwa'ir, we invited you all. So in this case, you've got yim, so tu, that's we. We are the subject. You tuwa'ir is how you'd say that on the coast. Ich sechan, I am the subject. Yichwa shuk, I laughed at you all. I am the subject. Ye ik kwasatin, the cha is right there. And then haswutu, we invited them all to again. And so with the subject, there's another little wheel that you can dial up, and you could pick one and only one thing. Any questions about that stuff?
So many questions. So my understanding, the object on this chart is halfway out because some objects can be disconnected. So the
Yes.
hut, ha can be disconnected, but the prefix includes object, thematic, conjugation, subject, and classifier. Can you like just highlight on any one of these verbs you have up here where the prefix is?
Yeah. So here, oops. So this one is isi, isse. That is the prefix. This one is ye, which if you were in Tuscan would be yin.
Mm,
This one, so it's basically all the same word, everything up to the root. That's how you do it. Everything up to the stem. Sorry. So ikwasa, right? Because if I could put a different one, I could put a different root on there. So I could say, it wouldn't have ye in front of it. I could say ikakwasaku, I will know you. You could say that, right? And so what we're realizing here is the single thing that changed would be the root in this case. And then
Okay.
here, woo. I guess I'll go there. Woo. Here, tua, utua, irse, chwa, ikkwasa, wutua.
Okay. That is helpful. Sheesh.
Mhm.
I have another question, but I'm not sure if this is the right place to ask. I'll just ask and you can decide whether it's the right place to ask. What's the difference between a direct object and an indirect object?
All of these, so it's an indirect object when it is one of these pronouns, when you could find it on that pronoun chart. If it's indirect, it would be out here like I, ach, I, do I, or do eat, do in, any of those types of constructions. So it's going to say, like you say, ach tu wu sagu. So that ach tu wu, it is part of the verb, but it cannot conjugate like this object right here. So,
Okay.
for example, I think a really good example for that would be in kachwanik. So here, if we sort of pulled this thing apart, so there is an object there, which we can do our color coding. We'll make it blue. There's this, which we'll make pink. That's a thematic prefix. There's a perfective marker, which we'll make gray. There's cha, which we'll make red, because that's the subject. That's me doing it. And then there's a classifier, ya, which we'll make purple. And then there's nig, which is the root. Well, it's the root in the stem. And so we'll make it brown. So this is the object of that verb. I told it to you. Now this is the indirect object, because you are affected by it because I told it to you, but you are not the object here. So other examples where this happens, you might say, ach, oops, let me copy this. Ah. So you say, ach, eat, idishe. So there's another, like, help me. That is an indirect object. And so it's usually these types of things, right? So you say, do, eat, yan, uaha. So they are the object of the verb. Like the verb is happening to them, but they are not a true object pronoun. That's really, if it's not on that list of pronouns, then it's one of those. And it's almost always ach, do, ye, those types of things. Good question.
Sheesh.
Any others? So that gets us to the thematic prefix, which is, it alters the meaning of the verb. It's usually a noun or a noun type of concept that is just built into the verb. And this is one of those things where you have 4 different spots and things live on specific spots. So on spot number 1, you have p, which relates to a certain physical space. Ka, compared to. So like ye kuge, it's so big. Number 2 is where we tend to get a bunch of nouns. J is hand or possession. Tu is inside. Sa is the voice or the neck. Sh is the nose or a point. Da is around or about. Ka or ka are the mouth or an opening. Sha is the head. Shu is the end. The one on this list that's not really a noun is a. So with like in audagon, that always has to be there. Or achatun, that has to be there. So sometimes what this does is it puts a focus on the action. So for example, here's an example. So you could say, achwa tlun. I went hunting, or I hunted, right? I guess we'll say let's just say I hunted. But if I say what I hunted, this thematic that's not an object, it's confusing because it looks a lot like a third person object. That reverts to an object pronoun, a true object pronoun. So you do have like a 0 here, right? And so there are certain things that there's a lot of body functions. So if you say outlet saw, anybody know what that is?
Or he or she burped, or they burped?
They burped. And what about what?
Pardon?
Urinated.
And
Poop.
Pooped.
So all of these have this built onto them. They all do. Now, if someone, I have never tested this theory, but if you work with a speaker and you have the courage to do it, how would you ask them, how would you say they pooped a rock? And my guess is is that should, well, I guess you would actually have to say, how would you say I pooped a rock? Because then you would say, you'd go from what it to what it. But it's a crappy theory. Okay. So then you've got spot number 3. So you have ka, spherical, ya, vertical, or the face of. And then on the fourth spot, the most common of them all is ka, which is a horizontal surface or on. So I do think, oh yeah, kidney stones. Okay. So you can, I've seen up to 3 of these. I don't know if you can, I don't think you can truly have 4, but maybe. So these are, they're the pink ones here. And the things to remember about these is I think you can add them to a whole bunch of verbs. This is why I don't think we can ever document every verb in Tlingit, because you can add these to them. But if you add it to them, it's a whole different verb. You've created a whole other verb. And if it has it on there, you cannot take it off without changing it to a different verb. They will always add to how things contract. Because when you talk about contraction, you start at the stem, and if you count the number of things, once you get to 3, Richard Dauenhauer called it the 3 strikes and you're out rule, it's probably going to start contracting, which we'll talk about how things contract at a future point. Any questions about these?
I have one. In that story verb dictionary, when you go to look up the Tlingit root, and then it lists all the different thematic and other prefixes for all the possible verbs. What are they? Classifiers and the pink, the thematic?
So I get the way that they organize these is, first of all, you're going to, as far as the classifier organization, so if they're going to list a bunch of different verbs under this verb root, because the way you make a new verb is you either change the classifier group, you add a thematic prefix, or you add specific things to the preverb. Those are your 3 options. I guess you can also add or remove objects and subjects, right? I guess those are your 4 options. So it's going to go the way we write it now: 0, D plus 0, S, D plus S, S-A, or no, L, D plus L, SH, D plus SH. Although I think that's how they alphabetize them. But then within each one, they're going to show what happens. So within here, they've got yati, which we would write as 0T. But then they put all these different verbs in here, which if you look at it, you have added things to the preverb, which have created different whole new verbs. But all of these, almost all of these, I think, they're all conjugated the exact same way. So if you can go yekwati or yenqati, you would do that to all of these. Let it appear before the people's eyes, right? If you know how to conjugate that verb, you add things in the prefix and you've got it. But then you start going down here. Now they'll start adding thematic prefixes and go through. Like, so here's a good example. So we got, this is a different T. This is the carrying one. 0 to carry general things, with a D to put on clothing, with an S to carry a solid object. So now we've changed the classifier. And then they'll start over and they'll say, well, if you add the thematic, then it starts to, I think, I don't know if they're really rigid about, oops, I raised my hand. I don't know if they're super rigid about how they alphabetize their thematics. But what I try to do in the dictionary I'm working on is that we'll go let's go through all the different classifiers, then I'll add the thematics alphabetically, and then all the different classifiers. And so that's how this works here.
And you said the third one, you said you got your classifier, you got your thematic, and what was the other one?
So
to make different verbs?
You could change the classifier group. You could add a thematic prefix or change it. or you could put a specific thing into the preverb. Like, for example, shuyati is to bring water by means of pipelines. But if you put g in front of it, it means to blame somebody. So sometimes it changes the meaning in pretty drastic ways.
Could Suyeyanaka way ook. How is it that you arrange them in your dictionary?
Yeah. So if we look at let's see, what's a good example? I guess maybe Han. I don't know. Okay, so for here. So I start with the verb without anything on it, and I would go classifier first. And I always try to organize them 0, D plus 0, S, D plus S, L, D plus L, SH, D plus SH. I go in that order. Then I would say now thematic prefixes alphabetized. So if you had one with K and one with Ya, K would come first. I just try to alphabetize them. But it's tricky because you got to, some of these, there'll be like 30 verbs in one and you got to kind of drag them around. And then if there's K, and that there's a K with a 0, that would come before K with an S. So then within K, I would look at it and again, organize it by classifier, which is an alphabetized, but it goes 0, S, L, SH. Because those are most common to least common. 0 is the most common, then S, then L, then SH. Okay. So here's some examples. So K pops up on there. Adat yuqatan, adat yututan.
Can you put more than one within a category? Like in two, like that section 2, jitsu sa.
You
just use
cannot have
one per category.
like a wheel. It's like a little combination lock.
Okay.
If it's a 7, it's a 7. Or I'm in a casino right now. If it's a cherry, it's a cherry. I think they're all digital now. I don't gamble. I ain't good at it. Okay, good questions. Very thoughtful. So this gets us to our last two things in the prefix. And so this one goes in a slightly different order than that little handbook that we're looking at. So here, the conjugation, this is where once you start moving verbs between modes, everything starts here. Everything. And then this, what happens in here, will combine with the conjugation type, 0, na, ga, or ka, and then the stem type, which we'll talk about. So those are two things we haven't fully talked about yet, but we will. But for now, when you say ade yan chagut, ya plus na is how you do a progressive verb. It's got to have that. But it could be yena or kena, and we'll get to that. Like, why? Why? There's reasons for all of this stuff.
Is ya a preverb there?
What's that?
Is ya a preverb?
It is a preverb. It should be. That's a good point. Let me do a little color manipulation here. Where's my little box of crayons? I don't have a little text now. Oh, now it's gigantic. Hold on. Go away. Okay. Hold on. Once I pull that little color box thing up, I don't know how to make it go away. Okay. Adechwagud. The single thing in the conjugation. So, and it gets confusing here too. This is the part that gets a little bit confusing, I think, is you have the conjugation prefixes right here, but then we have the conjugation type. And we'll talk about what that relationship is. But for now, so this has the perfecta marker, chwagud, kkwagud. Every single future verb has to have these three. There's just no way around it. It's like that unlocks the future padlock. Ga, ga, every single time. That doesn't mean that it has to be a future if you have those three things, but it needs to have those three things if it's a future. And then in this case, na and qa this is a hortative. Atin qagut, let me go there. So this is kind of where we're at. We haven't read the chapter on the classifier, so I don't really want to get into the classifier right now. I want to talk a little bit more about the verb conjugation and how that happens, because I think it's so important to the verb. So coming back to, there were 4 thematic prefix spots. There are 4 conjugation slots. So 1, 2, 3, 4. You have ga, 0, na, and qa. And you have yu and qa. What are these things? So this one is associated with ga conjugation verbs. So if you look up the verb good, like we know how to say they, like how do you say they are good?
Yeah. A.
Okay.
Okay. How do you say be good?
Okay.
So yake is a g conjugation verb. And so if we go look it up, we'll go look up a, and eventually my goal is to get you folks on the book of themes and to say, you don't need this dictionary to look up verbs. You don't need the database to look up verbs. I want to get us to a point to say, this stuff that I've highlighted is everything you need to know. So this right here says this is a g state verb. So that means, so let me copy this and paste it. Back to our notes. So we should know from this that, well, this has an object, so this is a little different than most, but this is how we would say be good, right? Because the conjugation prefix needs to be activated in the command form. So whenever you do any sort of command, you need to have that conjugation prefix activated. I just raised my hand again. Lots of questions today.
So if it has a object in the theme, it always has to be there in the imperative
command
as well.
Right. So like we'll find there. Here's another verb. This is another verb that I know that we know this verb. I know that we've heard it a bunch. We know this verb. Uh-oh. Someone has to fix that thing. Let me go find it. Okay. I want you to see the command form for it. So coming back to our notes. So this verb theme tells us everything we need to know about this verb. This is the yeyati, yenqati, yeqati. Like we know how to say those things because we have memorized them, right? We have memorized yeyati, we have memorized yeqati, we have memorized yenqati. But I want us to like know why it's that way. So one of the things is like looking at this theme. So the ye is there. Parentheses means something might take its place. That's what it means in this case. Like if you say, for example, you could say yeyati. That's different than khan yahyati. So now khan yah has taken the place of ye. But this one also has an object and it's na. So if I wanted to say be that way, I would say ye inati. That's the command form of this verb. We're going to get to command forms. They're a little bit, there's a bit to learn there. But for now, like, there is a lot that's going to take place right here. This is where all the conjugation prefixes are, is right in here.
Lance,
Yep.
I have a question for the ye in a te.
Mm-hmm.
If you are going to say, be still, do you say, play ye in a te, or do you say, play ye in a te?
Oh. The ye. I think you still keep the ye on there. Ye in a te. And so when you come back to here, like we'll go find ye, which also these preverbs should be alphabetical as well. So here's ye, so it stays there. But, and so these are just things where, so if you look at this one, there's no ye right there. So if I want to say be red, like I'm talking to a stoplight. Be red.
If you're telling somebody to be good, would it be yuck inate? Yay inate?
No, and so that's a very good question, because English uses to be to link verbs, right? It will be good. You be good. But in this case, you wouldn't add a verb, you would just change this verb. Ikake. Be good. And so when you hear something like this, they'll say, iklitzin. What does that say?
Be
Be
strong.
strong.
And so this is a lot of state verbs are g conjugation. So when you have I, g, th, and then seen, from here, 1, 2, 3. So because there's three things, you're going to get contraction. So one thing we could think about is what happens. I'm going to make this red to say this is going to go away. We are going to remove this vowel. And if we remove that vowel, this will now convert to a K, because it is a K. It just turns into a G when you add a vowel after it. And that's why you have iklitzin. And so like the goal for us is to begin to see these things. And it's not all going to make sense. Like I don't know why, I just know that's what it does. Oh, that must be one of those things where it's doing that. But then, so if I to w, so like we know, like, so we could say, so here you could say, chatlitzin, and then to wu chitzin. So this should show us this verb it's not a different verb. I mean, the way that it conjugates anyways. We have added stuff to the preverb that now changes what this verb is, right? So the meaning is, I am physically strong. I am courageous. So if iklitzin is be strong, how do you think you would say be brave as a command?
Ikhlatzin.
Well, it's got to have itu.
But after that, itu ikhlatzin.
ʼatudli.átk.
Yes, because we don't, now this has replaced, this is also this is an example of an indirect object, right? So here, there is no object there. It's just ʼatudli.átk, but it's doing the exact same thing. You have ga, cha, sin, but it ends with, the thing before it ends with a vowel. So that causes some extra just contraction. Okay.
Can you put in other things like ig, kletzine?
I don't know if, I guess, I don't think you could say it like, let your possession be strong. Like,
No, what I meant was your hands.
Let your hands be strong.
In other words, don't let go.
I think you would probably just say, you'd probably end up saying, Yadin Esha. But like, if you wanted to say, like, I don't know if you can use a command for like a body part being strong, but you might say something like, Ijin. Jingle. Okay. Okay. Auto type. Thank you. So we've got now Ijin. And now I think you would end up with that. So you would end up with a hortative, which would be let your hands be strong.
I was trying to treat any body part like itua, your mind.
Yeah, I think because like it's special because it's like your feelings, your spirit, your intentions. So like when you say like like that sadness, right? And so that's also like, I guess it just has a special meaning, I think. These are great questions.
I suppose it's because when you say ik kletzine, that covers all body parts. That's you.
Yeah. Yeah, so that iklitzin is be physically strong. So this is the slightly murky waters of Tlingit. This is where 90% of the verb work happens. I think this is the heart of it. This is the heart of the whole thing. So what you've got here, this one, ga, this one, zero, this one, na, this one, ga. These are the true conjugation prefixes that are linked to the conjugation type. Okay, so what does that mean? It means if you have a zero verb, like eating, I'd say, ha, that's your command form for eat it. Go to sleep, nata. Grab it, gashat. Catch it, gashat, right? And so these will pop up in the command forms. Generally, you can only have, so category 1 and 3 are linked. You can only have one of them. You can only have one. Because when you have the future, you have this ga, you have this and you have this ga, which is what we call ga mode. So.
You said sometimes it changes to K.
Yes, if you remove this, it will become a K. If you remove this, it will become an underline X. If you remove that, it will become an underline X.
And that becomes your conjugation prefix?
Well, it's in the if it contracts. We're talking about contraction, which is different than what these things are. But I want to get to this part too. I know we didn't get to our recording today, but we'll do that on Monday. So this one there's two of them on here that have two different jobs. So this one says, I am here for all g conjugation verbs. If you're a g conjugation verb, I'm here for you. But I also am here for the future. I will be in every future verb. Every future verb, doesn't matter if it's zero, na, ga, or ga. Every single one of them will use this for the future. Everybody know which other one has two jobs?
Na.
Na. So na says, I am here for every na conjugation verb. Ye inati, nata, you bet. Adenagu, you bet. I am also here for every progressive verb. Ya nagut, ya anasquain, ke nakain, ye nanech.
That also used the hortative.
The hortative will have the conjugation prefix that is linked to the verb and this qa. So you could say, that's why you say yenqati, naqati. But you would say gachlatzin, igachlatzin, let you be strong. You could say chatqachlatzin, let me be strong, if that's your prayer as you're lifting your heavy weight. Because it's ga conjugation. If you want to say, let them sleep, naqata, naqa. And if you say, let it exist forever, chatlaich, qasti. So the first thing is sort of like just conceptualizing what these things generally are, where they exist at. This is called the irrealis. It pops up when there's some break with reality. It's not that way. It's comparing something. It's a future thing. And then this is the perfective marker. The perfective marker usually means, let's talk about it strictly in terms of whether or not it has happened. So then the second thing is, what's the combination, right? What is the combination of things? Ga, qa, future. Conjugation type and qa, hortative. Conjugation type and irrealis and qa, potential. Right? And so there's a lot to this, right? So if you look at this, nata, shish itirik, ta, kesh uta, uta, kesh uta, gukata, kesh gukata, nakata, natach, kesh unatach, kesh ate unqataye, nakwatayan, natani, teich. So, but if you look, this shows you here what's going on in the conjugation section, which is made up of these 4 slots. Na, y, and y, ga, qa, na, qa, na, na, qa, na. So this goes through some examples. It shows you different verbs just to say, how does it change, right? And our focus right here is totally on the prefix, like what's going on in the prefix. That's what we're looking at right now. We'll get to stem variation. The next thing up is the classifier. But like for now, when you go to this section, this shows you all of the major verb modes and what needs to happen there. For example, here's a perfective, right? So a perfective needs to have you, and it needs to have a, this is kind of confusing. It's a plus I classifier. Maybe I need to fix that. And so for this, I'm just marking whether or not the classifier goes plus I. That's the only thing that you need to know for the classifier, which we'll get to. We're going to get to that next week. Thoughts or questions? We're going to look at a bunch of examples. So after sort of like reading these chapters, talking them through, we're going to start looking at verbs and we're going to start changing them. And then we're going to look at them and my goal is to say, just say them and start thinking about what kinds of things are happening in there. And you will get to a point where you can do all of this stuff on your own. But, I almost raised my hand again. Okay. So I'll let you know on Monday, but I think we're doing heavy stuff. So I do think Wednesday of next week will probably be a day off. Everybody's okay with that. So I'll be in
Is-
Anchorage getting an award.
Is a link to the verbal, your verb component handbook, is that on our webpage?
Yeah.
Class? Okay, so if we want to review what you've gone over, we could look at it there.
And I'll put
Okay,
it.
let's choose.
Anything else? Oh, yeah. Well, I think you can use the verbs ones. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just saying thank you.
Oh, yep. Okay, good cheese, folks. We'll see you on Tlin. I'll be back on Lingi. You wish
See you
Garcia.
Cheese.
Linkwachishtin.
Ah, Johan so cheese.
Can I ask a super random vocab question?
Sure.
Is there a word for like the strands of a braid or the strands in like this is warp?
Uh-huh. Oh, I don't know. What did we look up? Strand?
Yeah, I looked in the dictionary for strand, for ply, a third thing I don't remember. I only looked in the main online dictionary. I didn't dig around in niche story or in interior nouns.
So this says loose, unraveled strands or thread of it. And that's
That might work.
kakekuti.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
I don't know if there's other. Yeah, I think that's it. Oh, here's a three-stranded rope. Sintlidi. What is that? Muskrat tail? Well, what's the deal with their tail now? Okay.
I've never seen a muskrat's tail in person, so I don't know.
And then it gets us back to. So I think
Yeah.
a kakekuti would probably work. And some of this stuff, yeah, we might be approximating what's there, but
Mhm.
yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay. Cheese.